fairly fresh inscription, which is very clearly black. Just going to show you a few of the ranges of colours. This is a sort of mid-brown colour by mid to dark brown by Michelangelo, but you can already see that this fairly dark ink has caused quite a lot of damage to the support. Then we get the reddish browns of the Tiepolo and the small golden brown from the Claude Lorraine, and then a sort of darkish brown which is Ibsen. This is the frontispiece to his play Catalina. So we know that these darkish browns cause the most deterioration. And the research that's been carried out so far has identified one form of treatment that could stabilise this ink. The trouble is that a lot of the approaches would stabilise or improve the pH, but they might cause the colour change. And because we have become accustomed to the colour of these drawings, and in many cases consider them to be very beautiful the way they are, conservators and scientists are very cautious to seek a method of stabilisation which will improve the chemical situation but not change the physical one. So we don't really want to change, we certainly don't want to change the colour. So a lot of the treatment for these would be providing linings and infillings and retouchings, which is what all of that material is above. This particular drawing continued to degrade, and so it needed further treatment. So, the aesthetic impact. It can result in a distortion of our understanding of the working practice of an artist. We come to think that that's how they were always intended to be, and it's a bit like, I think, when you think of some of those classical architectural buildings, which we see now stripped of any colour and pristine and beautiful in their neutrality, but at the time they were constructed, many of them were adorned with fabulous colour, which we have completely lost sight of. So if we look at this Claude as it is now, and we then think of how it was then, it's a completely different piece. And the same if you look at the Tiepolo now, and how it was when Tiepolo first created it. Very different tone, very different atmosphere to these things. And the reason why I think this is of interest is because inks are prone to change. And sometimes those changes can be rather beautiful. They can be exactly what you want. It might be the process that you're interested in. But sometimes they can be damaging. And that might be something you do or do not find interesting. Corrosion can be an interesting subject, in that letting go of control of the way that something looks. But change can distort our understanding of the aesthetic. It can make us believe something is what it was never intended to be. And I think change needs to be considered when selecting any materials, not just inks. If the work is to reflect your intention or the intention of the artist in the long term. It's not to say that things should never change, but it should be a considered decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jean. And so, our last speaker before Lisa and I have a conversation.
Do we have time for Lisa's?
Yes, she's quite happy for us to continue. We probably won't have much time for questions at the end, but of course we will have the opening, so you'll all be able to ask all our speakers lots of questions at the opening, and I hope you'll join us for that. So Rika Stephen is going to give us a kind of overview of black as being used throughout art history.
So my reflection on very short art history of the color black takes it as its beginning, Lisa's very beautiful text. And I felt that the text was quite rather poetic actually, and it had many suggestive, so very, very suggestive things for me, but which you didn't articulate in the way that I probably would articulate them. So I'll try to, let's see. So I think the color black, of course, this is actually the palette of Delacroix, a very important painter in the modern period and history of colors. But I just wanted to begin with it. And the whole point, I think I would like to I'd like to read you some quotations, and it will take some while, but I hope you don't mind it. And I would like to begin with Junichiro Tanisaki's book, a short excerpt from his book, In Praise of Shadows. It's a book by the Japanese author written in the 1930s, and he wishes to talk about different kinds of blackness. And this is kind of long, but I'll try to read it very quickly. So he's saying, and while I'm talking of this whiteness, I want to talk also of the color of the darkness that enfolds it. I think of an unforgettable vision of darkness I once had when I took a friend from Tokyo to the old Sunya tea house in Kyoto. I was in a large room, the Pine Room, I think, since then destroyed by fire, and the darkness, broken only by a few candles, was of a richness quite different from the darkness of a small room. As we came in the door, an elderly waitress with shaven eyebrows and blackened teeth, which was the fashion, I guess, was kneeling by a candle behind which stood a large screen. On the far side of the screen, at the edge of the little circle of light, the darkness seemed to fall from the ceiling, lofty, intense, monolithic, the fragile light of the candle unable to pierce its thickness, turned back as from a black wall. I wonder if my readers know the color of the darkness seen by candlelight. It was different in quality from darkness on the road at night. It was a repletion, a pregnancy of tiny particles like fine ashes, each particle luminous as a rainbow. I blinked in spite of myself, as though to keep it out of my eyes. Smaller rooms are in fashion now, and even if one were to use candles in them, one would not get the color of that darkness. But in the old palace and in the old house of pleasure, the ceilings were high, the skirting corridors were wide, the rooms themselves were usually tens of feet long and wide, and the darkness must have always pressed in like a fog. The elegant aristocrat of old was immersed in this suspension of ashen particles, soaked in it. But the man of today, long used to the electric light, has forgotten that such a darkness existed. It must have been simple for specters to appear in a visible darkness, where always something seemed to be flickering and shimmering, a darkness that on occasion held greater terrors than darkness out of doors. This was the darkness in which ghosts and monsters were active. So I want to read this rather longish, in this moment, longish excerpt, because I think it encapsulates a lot of the things that we tend to associate with the color black. It's associated shadows. And I think it would take a really, really long epistemological history to talk about the darkness and light, because they are very, very basic. So very basic distinction that is made between light and darkness, and they have, we talk about information and knowledge as enlightenment, bringing light into something, and so on. So they are very, really, really serious matters. And then in very classic book about color terminology and history of colors, the authors, this 1960s book, Berlin and Kay, they say that in every language, first of all, it becomes a distinction between black and white, and then the third color is red, but there's always black and white to begin with in every single language that is known to us. And I wish to also emphasize that color is very, very deeply historical and cultural thing. And I think there are very different color cultures, there are very different historical understandings of color, and very often the colors, black and white, at the other sort of reverse, opposite ends of the color spectrum, they tend to be reversible in their symbolism. So in some places, dark black is taken for color of mourning, for example, and in some places, white is taken as the color of mourning and sorrow. So they seem to be interchangeable somehow and very, very important. But the color black, oops. So I will, this is one of my favorite works. It's awful now, and it's kind of, it's by the artist Remedios Varo from 1930s. She was part of the later generation of surrealists, and I wanted to take it because not because of its alchemistic associations or suggestions, but because of the idea that the painter somehow uses light. Here it's moonlight, and then the prism from the white moonlight, she is able, this all-light painter is able to make an actual here it's an actual bird, not a color bird, and then she has this automaton sort of making colors for her. So, mixing colors is what painters and artists do, and they have done so for a very, very long time. I'm an art historian, so I think my knowledge about pigment is rather limited, but I think I've read somewhere that Lascaux, for example, the charcoal used is still approximately the same type of charcoal. Oh, no. Well, no, there was something I was, oops, there's a picture missing. I wanted to show you a picture of William Kentridge, but you probably know his work. He works a lot with black color and doing animations. I especially wanted to show him pretending to be Georges Méliès, which is topical because of the film Hugo now. But anyway, so we had this sort of 30,000 years of human activity relating with color and perception. And I think it's also, it's one of the things that I've been very, very struck. It's not really related to black as such, but it's related to iron oxide. And it is known from, the archaeologists know that the very first substance that the humans that traveled in small herds wanted to carry with them was iron oxide that was burnt and that had the color of red. And it's known that there are, like in Poland somewhere, there are mountains where you can get a particular type of iron oxide, and it has been found by the Riviera. So human beings would actually consider red pigment so important that they would carry it with them on long stretches of travel and not care so much about food to eat. So the red might have been more important. But anyways, with color we have this very, very sort of deep relationship. And I'm totally unaware of what this is, but I guess this is a work by Ed Reinhardt, a monochrome from the 1960s, and he specifically wanted to do works that would be totally unphotographable, how do you pronounce it? I think you know what I mean. And he didn't want to, he kind of wanted to absolutely cancel everything about blackness. He actually, I have a quotation of, he actually quoted Hokusai, another Japanese 19th century painter, as saying that there is a black which is old and a black which is fresh, lustrous black and dull black, black in sunlight and in shadow. For the old black we must use an admixture of blue, for the dull black an admixture of white, for the lustrous black gun must be added. Black in sunlight must have grey reflections. And the Ed Reinhardt quotes Hokusai as saying this, and then he says, I want to cancel all that. My blacks would have nothing to do with anything. They are just black. And he was looking for what he called negativeness, sort of the absence of absence of symbolism, absence of conceptual sort of meanings, and he wanted to have merely black as such. And of course, you're well aware that this was related with the modernist ethos of trying to see into what actually constitutes the art of painting by stripping away everything. The American minimalists, they were kind of really wanted to take away everything and see what would remain as painting. And Clement Greenberg thought that maybe a canvas stretched on the frame would actually already be a painting, and that's that, and that's what painting should be concentrating on. And the Americans in the 1960s and 70s, they were really, really bent on canceling things. Eva Hesse, the very famous artist, wanted to cancel the sexual difference because she felt that it didn't have any relationship with her work, and she just said to an interviewer, "But I cancel that, it doesn't have anything to do with me." So this is Ed Reinhardt in his studio sometime in the 1960s. And this is another work that looks totally different now. It also reminds me of the deterioration of materials. This is one of the famous black squares by Kazimir Malevich, a Russian supremacist painter. And this is the one, I just took it from the Tretyakov Art Gallery pages, home pages, and you can see it's totally, it has this beautiful patina, which was never intended. And for Malevich, working in 19-teens, he tended to antedate retrospectively his paintings because he wanted to be the first to actually be an abstract painter. So this would mean the total cancellation of previous art history. And Malevich, as you know, he felt that all the paintings in the museum should be burnt, because, and then the ashes should be put in jars, because then they would take less space. No waste of space for him. So, but for Malevich, there was a very, very deeply transcendental significance in them, in the black paintings, which he felt that they would actually contain, in Platonic terms, the absolute sort of real reality. So they tend to be rather ambiguous in their cancelling out of the sensuous properties. And of course, Ed Reinhardt wanted to cancel all this too. They wanted to cancel the salon tradition, that type of thing where you just have loads and loads of pictures. This is an image, a photograph from Paris Salon, 1852.